Well, I think probably in the most difficult question about faith, and it's not really science. I think that's largely, it's not a red herring, but it's not really that difficult of an issue to resolve. Much more difficult is the issue of suffering. Why is there suffering? Particularly, why is there personal suffering? Why do you suffer because of nature? Why is there natural evil, in other words? Why is there children born with defects? Why does somebody I love get cancer? Why was there a tsunami that wiped people out? I think those are much more difficult questions to resolve, to which I don't really have an answer. And here, although this is a case where I think my science helps give me analogies to understand this better. So if you look in the Bible, one of the amazing things about the Bible is that it never gives an answer to the exact reason why there is suffering. That's really surprising, because it's not as if the problem of suffering is something new. And there's books like the book of Job, which deal with suffering very directly. But Job is never given the full answer himself of why he suffers. It's just hinted at there's some kind of cosmic reality going on behind the scenes. And interestingly, when Job questions God, God answers him from nature, say, were you there when I placed the stars in the heavens, etc., etc. And so God just points to nature and says, look, I'm really powerful, you have to trust me. And so one of the fascinating things about the Bible is that it doesn't give a simplistic answer to suffering. It doesn't say, well, the reason why you're suffering, you have cancer, is because in a previous life you did something bad, and so there's this balance of good and evil of your karma, and that's why something bad happened to you. It doesn't explain that at all. Although I'm sure that people at the time, if I had written the Bible, I would have made up some explanation and explained to you why suffering happens. And so instead, I think that probably the real answer behind it is something much more subtle. Instead, what we see in the Bible is that God suffers with us, that he cares for us, that Jesus came down and emptied himself and took on the form of a servant, etc. That God shares with us the suffering, but never gives us that full answer. And I think the real reason for that is I can think of one way of thinking about that is analogical from quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics is a theory of things that are really small, and we have an equation called the Schrödinger equation, which is extremely accurate and calculate things to very high precision. But the way that the quantum mechanical world works is very different from the way of our day-to-day life. One example of that is wave-particle duality. So things can be wave-like, and they can be particle-like. And so when I talk about an electron, I can say it acts like a wave or it acts like a particle. Those are two incompatible descriptions. They're complementary in some sense. And I use that language not because the thing itself is mysterious, because I can calculate it with the Schrödinger equation. It's just that I don't have in my day-to-day life concepts that correspond to what the mathematics describes to me. So it's just a heuristic, easy way of explaining things. And I think that somehow on this question of suffering, for example, that there may be some deeper Schrödinger equation, if you want to call it that behind the universe, a deeper magic, to use the language from Narnia, that does make all this, that everything makes coherent sense. But somehow in our day we don't have that deeper magic. We just see the wave-like and the particle-like aspects of it, aspects which sometimes seem incompatible with each other. God is love, and yet people suffer. All those things. And somehow all we see is that higher level without seeing the underlying reality. But because in science I've seen and experienced how a deeper reality can seem very contradictory at the day-to-day level, but I know that deeper reality is true and coherent, I therefore also believe that there's a deeper reality in these spiritual matters, like the question of suffering, that it will be deep and coherent once I understand it. But for whatever reason, God hasn't revealed that to us. And so we live with what we've been revealed, what's been revealed to us, and that's how we're asked to live.